Good afternoon, people. It's another great day here in South Wales. Yesterday I gave a little bit of a talk on the alien debate and covered a few subjects, but it's a big topic, and I didn't say everything I really wanted to say. And you know how it is when you've got an unscripted video going. It's kind of difficult to remember everything. And today I'm going to go through a little of the evidence that's been presented over the years, and right at the end I'm going to come up with a theory, I suppose, that just might provide an answer to at least some of the UFO cases that have been reported since 1947. Anyway, so here we go. The modern, if you will, UFO phenomenon started around the end of the Second World War, when bomber crews were coming home and reporting seeing strange lights that flew alongside their aircraft and sometimes even flew around their aircraft. And I heard at least one case where the light actually entered the aircraft, flew along the fuselage and exited out the back. And then just after the war, we had the Kenneth Arnold case in the Rocky Mountains, and Roswell the same year in 1947. And it kind of blew up from there, really. In the 1950s and 60s, the world went UFO crazy. And there was some convincing cases and some not so much. I guess the full spectrum of the UFO phenomenon manifested itself in that time, and then it quietened off again in the 70s and 80s. But we got today, now with the advent of science and physics programs, UFOs that kind of defy sometimes the laws of physics, but still can be explained. And there's a excuse me, there's a certain phenomena in UFOs that, whether deliberate or unintentional, it either debunks the notion that there are life forms aboard and these things are drones, or they have some technology that mitigates G-force. Oh dear, I've been catching flies. Sorry about that. The UFOs in question tend to make some spectacular turn maneuvers and accelerate and decelerate at rates that would liquefy ordinary life forms. But like I say, either there's no life forms on board, or they've got something on there, as Star Trek called them, inertial dampeners, that mitigate the forces of the acceleration and deceleration forces. So where do we go from here? Yeah, and then there was some rather interesting, intriguing even, abduction cases. And I'm going to mention two of these, and possibly a third, just for comedy effect. But there was Betty and Barney Hill. They were a a biracial couple, as I remember, that were travelling back home one night down in the American Southwest somewhere, and they saw some lights, and then next thing they knew they were elsewhere. I can't remember whether they were still with the car or they were at home, but it was several hours later. Now, to my mind, I mean, I've heard this, it's just not my opinion because there are mitigating circumstances here, but if you're driving along a highway at night, you suddenly see bright lights, and then you wake up a few hours later, I think you might have been in a road crash, honey. But then again, they never claimed any damage to the vehicle, or the fact that there was no other vehicle involved and neither of them were really hurt. But there's that thing of the time loss again, and I think they went under some hypnosis treatment or other to try and break open some memories. But that, again, as I mentioned yesterday, Jim Marsh's file, that's gone on the back burner until further information reveals itself. But then we have the case of Travis Walton. You may have seen the movie on TV, it was called Fire in the Sky. But a bunch of roughnecks and loggers were out working. I think it was Oregon, don't quote me on that. I think it was in Oregon, or it was up in Washington or something like that. Somewhere up in the northwest. They were out, Travis was part of the gang, and they saw something on the side of the road when they were on the way back to town that evening, and Travis decided he wanted to get out of the car and have a closer look. And while the rest of the gang stayed in the car, he wandered over to where this big bunch of bright lights was showing itself from behind the trees. And he didn't come back. And when the rest of the team arrived, panic-stricken, back in town, the police, they thought they'd murdered him, and it wasn't until a few days later that Travis showed up again. And some of the things he described, he saw, well, they were quite horrific. This examination table and everything, and there was one piece in that film that always stuck with me, was when he was being dragged down that corridor by the ankle. He was supposed to have been on the spaceship somewhere, and he was being dragged down this corridor by the ankle, by this alien, and then there was glasses and wallets and other debris floating up from the floor, and it made it look like this hadn't been the first time they'd done this. But whether that was the filmmakers put that in or whether that was part of Travis's story, I've got no idea. But anyway, I've got no doubt Travis experienced something. What it was, I can't say. But let me put this little flea in your ear. Bunch of guys out in the woods after dark. What were they smoking? Yeah. Maybe they weren't. Who knows? Maybe he wasn't kidnapped by aliens at all. Maybe he just saw something the government just didn't want him to see, and they shot him full of shit. And he saw something else. And, well, who knows? Who knows? There's places in the UK here that I swear people go and they don't come back. And they're government establishments. And one day I'll talk about it, but I can count myself as a survivor of one of those. It wasn't because I went in there, although I have been in one or two. My dad, when he was in the military, he was invited to take part in experiments in one of these places, and he turned it down. And I can thank my lucky stars that he did, because I don't think I would have been here now if he had accepted their offer. But anyway, I'm getting off the track here. That's that. Yeah, the government doesn't like talking about this for one of two reasons. And now this is where I'm going to get into that little theory that I had. And I'm going to take you to Roswell, because that came with pictures. And if you've researched Roswell at all, or if you haven't, please do, because you will see a lot of photographs that are actually out in the open, and you will get some idea of what we're talking about here. But something hit the ground in the desert just outside Roswell in 1947, and it wasn't for about a week until the local farmer found the wreckage on his land, and he thought it might have been a crashed aircraft, so he called in the military, and they came and closed the area down straight away and swept the place clean. And when the press got wind of this, they went and asked the military for a statement, and the military said, yep, we've got ourselves a flying saucer that's come down, and we're taking it away now, and we're going to have a look at it. And then a few hours later, they changed the story. And they said, no, we made a mistake on that. It was a weather balloon. And long story short, there's this argument that's been going backwards and forwards for decades now. What was it? A weather balloon, or was it a spacecraft? Wow. You just take a look on the map and find yourself Roswell. It doesn't really matter whereabouts exactly this UFO craft. It was just in the district of Roswell. And then you just fly over the hill. It's not even a cigarette and flying time till you get White Sands Proving Ground, the missile proving ground. And then you fly a few cigarettes further in the same general direction, and you'll come across Area 51. Okay, that's in the next state over, but it ain't that far away. It's within easy reach of an airplane, especially a jet fighter. You know, it doesn't take long to cover ground at 500 and 600 miles an hour, or even faster, who knows. Now, the government, I think they put this flying saucer story out deliberately to muddy the water on what they really had there, and then they muddied it some more with this weather balloon. Now at the time, that's kind of provable, because they were using what was called mogul balloons, and they were, you got to remember, this was at the height of the Cold War, and the world was full of nuclear tests. This was the height of the nuclear testing season, as it were. And a few test treaties had been signed, and one side was keeping an eye on the other. And the mogul balloons went up, and they actually detected the gamma ray bursts from a nuclear explosion above ground, you know, and they did it from high altitude, and they didn't have to be able to see over the curve of the earth. They would just detect that flash off the atmosphere, and that's what kind of I kind of think they were up to. They had this bloody great balloon up there, and it was literally spying over the horizon on Russia to see if they were lighting off nukes, and they didn't want anyone to know about it. So they put in this story to cover for what really happened at Roswell, and I think they had the first hypersonic spy plane flying around at the time. You know, the predecessor to the SR-71. I mean, this thing was probably not as fast as the SR-71, but it was only 15 years adrift or so from that plane going on the drawing board. I think the SR-71 flew in mid-60s for the first time. And Roswell happened in 1947, so that's 13. There's about 17 years between the two events. Not that far away when you consider it's been 22 years since 9/11, and what we got flying now and what we had flying then. Pretty much the same stuff. I think it was some sort of secret spy plane that went in at Roswell, and they didn't want anybody to know about it in case it might have had some really spooky stuff on board. That 47, we're talking maybe one of the first digital computers, maybe a new kind of jet engine. Who knows what it had on board. Maybe it was made out of Kevlar because they invented that around the same time. I haven't got a clue. But I guarantee you one thing here. What hit the ground at Roswell was ours. And the Americans have been purporting this UFO story ever since. And they've been using it to cover their tracks. And that's why we haven't had disclosure. Because personally, I don't think there's anything to disclose. And once they admit that, away goes one of their ways of keeping things a little bit classified. Anyway, folks, what else can we say about the UFO case? The UFO debate. I kind of think I'm going to wrap that one up there, and I'm going to let you kind of make your own minds up. So say, don't believe a word of what I say. You do your own research and you figure things out for yourself. I think the sooner we stop arguing between ourselves over this and start prodding the powers that shouldn't be for answers, that's when we'll get somewhere. Thank you very much for listening. Have a good day. Until next time, take care.